in India we have the Mahashura Mardini. Then we have the concept of Dharam Patni, right? So in all of this context, we have the Saptamatrikas, which are the 7 divine mothers. So in all of this context, we will discuss in terms of the Bharatiya concept of feminism and the Western concept of feminism. Bharatiya concept of Shakti and Western concept of feminism. So my first question would be to Maria ji, who has lived in India for about 4 decades. She grew up in Germany, and in Germany, she grew up understanding what she saw and the concept of feminism. So I'd like to ask her, did she experience it over there? Her experiences, and now, while she's lived 40 years in India, which means you saw the 2nd, 3rd, and the 4th wave of feminism, all of it, and how much it affected India, and how do you view it?
Actually, I didn't see the later waves very much because I was in India. But I was born 5 years after the war, and when I was small, a child, things were quite normal still in Germany. I mean, it was not shameful to be only a housewife, and we had, every morning there were 2 masses in church. The family was still intact. If one partner did not want to get divorced, there was no divorce possible. And then I went to boarding school, in a Christian boarding school, which was good in a way because I got an overdose of Christianity, which made it easy for me to get out of it. And when I was in school, I was actually happy that I was a girl, not a boy, because I felt I don't have to make a career. And when I came out of school, I realized things had very much changed. There were several things. First of all, there was a big divide between the young generation and the parents, because we blamed our parents for not standing up to Hitler. Then we also criticized the church because the Pope was also not standing up, not at all, to Hitler. And when I came out, suddenly I was supposed to make a career. When there were feminists came up in Germany, and they were even fighting that we should also go to the military service. In Germany, there was obligatory service for boys. And I remember that they were fighting that we girls also have a 18 months obligatory service. And that's when I felt those feminists, they don't represent me. I really don't, I don't want to go to the military service. So, and there was much more also because suddenly this hippie movement came up, and sexuality became a topic almost every day in newspaper. And it was, for girls, it was a little difficult because you were supposed to be so free and so open. And the feminists then also said, we have to be financially independent and we must not depend on men. So it started a little, this kind of division between men and women.
Mariaji, to you, what you just said. So Christianity has, patriarchic theology. So
Yeah.
what was your experience with that? Because you just mentioned Christianity when you started off talking about this. So how do you see that playing a role?
I couldn't hear really. Yeah.
Since you mentioned Christianity.
I mean, from Christianity, you all know the story in the Bible that Eve and Adam was sent out, and Eve was blamed for tempting Adam to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So God, when he sent them out, he cursed her to have children under pain and to be submissive to her husband. And women had always very bad status in Europe. I mean,
But this part that you explained about Adam and Eve, did it percolate down? Did women of your age at that time understand this, that this is the reason and therefore, we should not get into feminism, or they were not bothered or didn't understand?
no, I don't think so. I think what happened was that when you have a bell curve of a normal woman, the maximum women were basically still very happy not to go to work. But the fringe person, they were representing, suddenly they were the feminists. They were, for example, we had a very famous one, Alice Schwarzer. She was very prominent, and I think it was her who also came once to India. And now, last year only, she married her girlfriend. So she was representing us, but at that time she did not say that she was lesbian. So
She was a feminist. She was a feminist.
yeah, she was a very prominent feminist. So I talked with a friend of mine recently, and she said, I think that the people who guided us at that time, they were not the right people. So this I think they pushed us too much. I mean, this free sex wave also pushed us too much. It was heavy on the girls because there was so much peer pressure to get over the hang-ups of the church. And we were not sure, is it now a natural instinct to be a little reserved, or is it really the church who has influenced us? So it was a little confusing, and the whole atmosphere, it was actually very bad. In Germany there was a saying, if I translate it, it is a rhyme, it was rhyming. I should not say it maybe. Yeah.
Okay. My question to you, after she's given the context of what she grew up in Germany and everything, you grew up in India, you're an Indian woman, you represent the Shakti, and you have a very good following on Twitter, which includes a lot of women, right? A lot of women started following you because you used to speak about the Indianness, the sari and everything. How do you see and how do you define Indic feminism? Is it there? Is it not there? What is it?
See, first of all, I'm not a big fan of the term feminism per se. Madhu Keshwar actually has written a very interesting article, which is very popular, about why I don't call myself a feminist. And she's talking about herself. But I think that more or less applies to me as well, where she says that I chose the name Manushi for my journal because I wanted to emphasize the humanness. Okay, maybe it's a humanness of another gender, but I wanted to talk about humanness that transcends the gender bias. And the term feminist is a label that was coined for the first time in France, I believe. Somebody used the word feminisme in 18th century, and since then, as you said, there has been the first wave of feminism, second wave of feminism, third wave of feminism. But it is all oriented to the West, and it has a very limited outlook, which is to fight for equal rights for men and women. Whereas what we have is a concept of Shakti, which says that the feminine is a power in itself. It's not fighting for equal rights because it assumes that Shakti is a power in itself, and it's only when Purusha and Prakriti meet, it's only when Shakti and Shiva meet that life can be created. So they are equal, that is understood by definition that they are equal, and we have been worshipping the mother goddess from the Sindhu Saraswati civilization. As you know, that we have found the murtis and we have found seals which have both the Pashupati Shiva as well as the mother goddess, and it has been going on since then. And which is why we have so many times male saints being described as mother, and this is unheard of anywhere in any other culture. So Jnaneshwar, who is Sant Jnaneshwar, who is the most famous Sant in Maharashtra and probably in India as well, he is referred to as Jnaneshwar Mauli, meaning Mother Jnaneshwar, not Father Jnaneshwar, because he is looked at somebody who is like a mother to all the devotees. So this gender fluidity was always there in our culture, this ability to transcend the X chromosome or Y chromosome and to consider the feminine as divine and a force as equal and opposite or rather complementing to the male force was always there. So the struggle was never for equal rights. So which is why I get very upset when you have these modern feminist narratives which look at our saints and our traditions from the Western perspective and describe Meera as a feminist, describe Janabai as a feminist, describe Akka Mahadevi as a feminist.
But
that was not what they set out
yes,
to do
sure.
at all.
You may not agree with the term feminism. That is really up to you, or whether you subscribe to those ideas or not. But is there Indic feminism? You may not subscribe to the idea of feminism. Is there Indic feminism? I'm just going back to the question.
The term feminism doesn't apply. There is a concept of women as Shakti. So that to me is far above the limited scope of feminism. Definitely we have a concept of the feminine divine. So how can you actually to call it Indic feminism to bring it down?
So you see the Navadurgas as feminists?
No. Navadurgas are far above feminism. That's what I'm trying to tell you. To try to fit a label called feminism on Navadurgas and our feminine divine is actually to bring the discourse down. Yeah. It's not to elevate it. That is my thing.
Okay, so you're totally not for the term feminism, using it or whatsoever. All right. So my next question to you itself, if feminism breaks the cults of domesticity, then who takes care of home?
A home is a joint responsibility, and it always was a joint responsibility, even in the times when the roles were traditionally divided, where the woman was a nurturer and she was staying at home and raising the kids, and the men were going out and working. But even then, if you see in rural India or in tribal India, you always found that women were equal participants in economic activity as well. So they used to look after their children and go to the fields, and the men also used to do the same thing. Same goes for craft. So if you go to a weaver's house even today, you will see that both the husband and wife work on the same loom. They have children. Sometimes the husband goes inside and looks after the children if the child starts crying. Sometimes if the baby is very small, then obviously the woman goes out. But the domestic chores are shared. Household responsibilities are shared. And I went to Odisha, and there was this couple, both of them are national award winning weavers. They are older now, so they have grandkids. So the child was there, in the background playing on the quilt, and the husband and wife were taking turns to weave. And every time the child wanted attention, either the husband would go or the wife would go. In between, the husband would go and get us water, or the wife would go and make tea. And at the same time, this was happening very naturally, and they were doing work also on their loom. So that was the way professions were organized in India. So it was not necessarily a conflict between who will look after the house and who will go out. It's only when jobs started happening outside the house and women started to go out of the house, that is when this question arose. And that is when, but in India you had extended family, and I would vouch for it. I had triplets. I came back to India because I wanted my children to be supported by an extended family, and it's very essential. It doesn't matter where you are, whether you are in the US, whether you are in India or in Europe. Every mother will tell you that it takes a village to raise a child. So it is not the mother's job alone, it is the family's job to raise a child anywhere you go. The places where you're forced to do that, and that is where the whole second wave of feminism came about with Betty Friedan, where she says that when women go out and work, they only lose their vacuum cleaners, they don't lose their men, is what she said. So she was talking about the woman's right to go out and be an economic breadwinner or to support the family, which is absolutely true, but it is not necessarily related to the Indian concept. Now it is in urban areas, yes, I agree, which is why now you have subsidiary activities like creches and baby minders proliferating. But in traditional Indian societies, that was not the case, because you always had enough people in the family, and if your work involved working from home in your traditional professions, then both the men and women worked, and both of them shared the household responsibilities.
My question to you, Mariaji: equal pay, suffrage, sexual violence. Do you see these as rightful demands or issues that need to be addressed under feminism?
Actually, when I just listened to Shefali, I realized how sane Indian society still is. How sane Indian society is compared to our Western society. And I feel that's why, it is also one reason why India is so much under attack. they try to break this family structure. In fact, I was in 1980, I was once in Max Müller-Bhavan, and I think it was Alice Schwarzer. It was a German feminist who was there. And I was sitting, there was a table, and there were some 7, 8 Indian women. And it was the first time in 1980 I saw a woman in jeans or trousers and smoking. And they had such a different atmosphere than what you see normally on the road, on the street. And Indian women are so beautiful also. And I feel they want to destroy it. A German psychology professor told me once that Indian women are very beautiful, but they are not sexy. They do not, so I feel that this is so healthy. Now, equal pay, yes, of course, equal pay should be there. I still wonder why women are pushed so strongly into the workforce. After all, there are not enough jobs. I met a young man from Bulgaria recently. He was a mathematician, 22 years, very interested in mathematics. And he was not yet married, but he said, when I marry, why should my wife work if I have enough money? Then there were some other foreign women, older women, were sitting on the same table with him and me, and they were pouncing on him. You don't think of the woman wants to work. It was so taken for granted, and I felt out of it because I feel...
Who takes care of the home?
Yeah.
Shefali, my question to you. How do you see the role of a dharam patni? You know, because the construct of feminism, you know, so in terms of the Indian context, how do you see the role of the dharam patni? What is the dharam patni?
See, when you get married, according to Vedic traditions, that you're supposed to take the vows where it says that dharmecha, arthecha, kamecha, nati charami. Meaning in the matters of dharma, I walk with you. In matters of economy, I walk with you. In matters of desires, I walk with you. And I walk with you. It is not I walk behind you. It is not I walk ahead of you. It is I walk with you together. So that implies that in matters of dharma, I am there as an equal partner. In matters of artha, in matters of decision making, economic decision making for the family, I am there with you as an equal partner. And in terms of desires, that is sex and procreating and producing children and producing the second generation, there also I am there walking with you as an equal partner. And the fourth purushartha, which is moksha, it is implied that if we do these three things together, as according to dharma, then ultimately we will be together on the path to the fourth purushartha as well, moksha. So there it is implied that there is equality. Secondly, women in Sanskrit are called Purandhri, which comes from the root Pura, which means the city, and Dhra, which means to hold. So the city who hold, the person who holds the city together, the person who holds a civic structure together is a Purandhri, is a woman. So obviously, without the woman's role, the man's Purushartha is not complete, which is why we have Ardhanari Ishwar, or as Sonal Mansingh is very fond of calling it, Ardhanar Ishwari. It's the same thing, but which means that there is one half of which is male and one half of which is female, and together you form one complete human being, which is why even Ram, when he had to do the Rajasuya Yagya, his wife was not there with him. He had to make a golden pratima of Sita and sit for the Yagya. Otherwise the Yagya wouldn't have been complete.
So basically, dharam patni, the one who contributes to the works related to the dharma.
See, even if you see Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, where there is a dialogue between Maitreyi and her husband Yagyavalkya. So Yagyavalkya is telling her that, okay, I have reached that stage where I want to where I want to move into Vanaprastha. So I will divide my earthly goods between you and my other wife Katyayani. And she says, okay, but I have some questions for you. So he says, what questions? And she asks the question, she says that if you give me your wealth, will I be happy? She doesn't ask him, aaj khane mein kya banana hai? She doesn't ask him, what should I feed the children? She asks him a philosophical, metaphysical question that if you give me your wealth, would it make me happy? If not, what will make me happy? And then obviously the whole conversation goes into several aspects of philosophy or whatever. But it is an extremely sophisticated, intelligent conversations which at that point of time you have a man and a woman, forget that they are husband and wife, they are having an extremely sophisticated, intelligent, philosophical conversation about the soul, about the nature of soul, about happiness, the nature of happiness, all the questions that we are grappling with today. And this happened, I don't know how many thousand years ago.
So are men and women dependent on each other, or this entire thing of feminism, which sees it only through a lens of oppression? That's the only lens that they see too. So do you see that?
Of course, men and women are dependent upon each other. See, equality is not sameness. I am equal to her, but I am not the same as Maria ji. She has a different point of view, I have a different point of view, but we are equals. So if that is the basic premise that go with, that men and women are equal but not the same, then this question of competition will never arise. Question of I am better than you, or I am more powerful than you, or you are more powerful than me. This whole question doesn't arrive. See, right now I am here and I am supposed to be this very traditional housewife, whatever the labels that the left side tries to stick to me. I am here for 3 days. I have 3 children. Who's looking after the children? My husband is. But he's not saying this, it's not a quid pro quo that for one time you look after the children and then I'll go somewhere, and next time I look after the children and you go somewhere. No, it's just that whose need is larger at that point of time. This is exactly what a relationship should be.
Maria ji, if masculinity is bad and feminists want to defeat it, how can they do that? Especially in the context that, they want to be like men.
Well, I don't understand this concept, why is masculinity bad? I mean, women and men, men and women, they should be complementary, no? And I feel the West has got so many things wrong. For example, in India still the concept of duty is there. In the West it's all about rights only. And I remember then when I came out of school and we were studying, and there was this discussion, why should I give in when my husband gets a job in a different town? Why should I go with him? He can stay with me. I have also my friends. Why should I give up? So I felt it will be always a battle. It spoils the relationship, and children, they became basically a burden. I really, when I came to India, it is such an experience to see the children growing up. I mean, you can really become jealous from my point of view, no? Because in the West it's very different. So I really hope you can keep your culture and you are not too influenced by those Western pushes, like I think Harvard University, they want now to do, they developed some module for adolescent education. They have no business to come into India, in my view.
But do you think that when women want to be like men, do you think women want to be like men, the feminists? Because what they're challenging is masculinity. And then they also want to be like men.
I think it is a question of this bell-shaped curve. There are,
which you mentioned before.
Yeah, there are people, some people, they may want to be fighter pilot, even some women. But it's a fringe which has its right, and they should be able to do it. But they should not impose on the majority their preferences. And right now, it's almost as if the majority, as if it is old-fashioned, it should not be say everybody should be on the fringe somehow.
Shefali, would you also like to address the same question that I gave to Maria ji?
What was the question?
That if masculinity is bad, then do you think that feminists actually want to be like men? Then what are they talking about?
See, there is a little bit of masculinity in all of us, in all women, and there's a little bit of femininity, or rather equal femininity in men as well. The question is, at that point of time, what is needed? What quality or what attribute do you need the most? That makes you give the responses depending upon the situation. For example, if tomorrow, if I feel that my children are in danger or whatever, my response will be what would be conventionally described as masculine. I will be the same person, but at the same time, if my children are unwell, then the way my husband looks after the children, there is what is described as conventional sense of femininity. Again, I come back to the same thing. Equality is not sameness. You need to have masculine qualities, you need to have feminine qualities, and together they make as a whole.
But yes, sure, but what they are talking about is not about the, in one sense they talk about equality, in the other sense they want to be like men. And while they're challenging masculinity.
But that is the third wave of feminism and the post-third wave of feminism, where Betty Friedan, who wrote the first book, I think it was called Feminist Mystique, and where she said that women need to go out and join the workforce and whatever. So later on, I think she wrote a book called The Second Stage, where she said that maybe its time has come to relook at that same feminist doctrine, which she herself had propounded, and said that that was done at the cost of taking out so many things, and most importantly, that was it sacrificed the family, because a family needs both these attributes. So in a way, you're right. So all these strident feminists, to use Madhu Kishwar's words, the labels that people put in radical feminism, social feminism, whatever feminism. So in that, the whole idea is to, kill what is traditionally considered as feminine in you and use what is traditionally considered as masculine, and then say, oh, men, they have been oppressing us for centuries, but we want to be like men. So yeah, there is a paradox there.
But in spite of it, nobody wants to go out in the early morning and be a fisherman, for example.
And do the work that men do.
Yeah.
Not even a feminist?
Yeah.
All this comes from, once my daughter came from school, and I think she was 10 or something at that point of time, and she came from the school with her head full of saying that, oh, in India, women are discriminated against. That's a very big, broad, generalized statement to make. In India, women are discriminated against. So I said, okay, sit down. Do you mean to say in India, all women are discriminated against? In all households, all Indian women are discriminated against? So she said yes, and then she rattled off the things that she had learned in school, all the killing of female fetuses or whatever, which is all true, and I'm not denying any of it. But I told her, okay, now let us take it individual by individual. You are a woman, I'm a woman, you've got two brothers, I've got two brothers. But have you ever felt, and you are 10 years old, you are old enough to understand this, have you ever felt discriminated against in this household? Have you ever felt that I have judged you unfairly or asked you not to do something or whatever? So she thought about a bit and said no. So I said, okay, have you felt that your mother has been discriminated against, or has your father ever told your mother not to go, or said that the kitchen is only your domain or whatever? She said no. So I said, we have established that at least in these houses, both the women that are there are not discriminated against. She said yes. Then I said, let's expand that circle and talk about cousin, aunts or whatever. And I kept expanding the circle. Then I said, now you agree that at least in India, in some households, women are not discriminated against? So she said yes. I said, I'm not denying the fact that there are problems, that women are being discriminated against in many parts. It's a struggle for even basic rights. I'm not denying any of these things. But let us not paint the whole society in broad brush and say that in India it's a hellhole for women, it's a rape capital for women, all sorts of propaganda that is being thrown at you. You Google search and you will find that widows of Vrindavan playing Holi the first time story. The
Just
first
few
time
years back.
Since 2013. So in 2013 they played for the first time, 2014 they played for the first time, 2015 they played for the first time. How many first times? Which is not to say that widows in India are discriminated against. They are in many, many, many parts, and I understand that, and I accept that there is a problem. But doesn't mean that, you pass on the false canards and paint India with just the same brush.
Where do you see this problem? Since you mentioned widows, we have a Devi, in the 10 Mahavidyas, which represents widowhood, the Devi of death, Dhumavati. So where do you see this thing happening, where you mentioned that the widows in India are discriminated against, and when they play Holi for the first time, it is spoken as first time, but then the first is not ending. So where do you see, when did this gap happen? Where did this whole, thing happen? Where in India, if somebody understands Dharma properly, right, then why would something like this be happening in a country like India?
See, I'm not a scholar, and I cannot give you a standard answer for this, saying that exactly what caused the status of women to be at the current level in India. There are many, many factors. Of course, people will tell you that Islamic rule, oppression, lot of things. But it is a fact that during Vedic times, women had equal rights. They had the right to decide to marry, not marry. They had a right to undergo Vedic education. Even in Buddhist times, where the society had deteriorated to a great extent, but when Buddha included women in the Sangha, there is a beautiful collection of poems called Therigatha, which is written by the Buddhist bhikkhunis. And if you read some of the poems there, it's extremely sublime poetry where they're talking about the problems and how they overcame the problems of their life. And the problems are, they're relevant even today. If I read Therigatha and I read about, say, Amrapali is talking about how once my body was so beautiful, how my hair was beautiful and curly, now it smells like an animal's hair, but the never changing vachans of the Buddha, they never change. The eternal truth never changes. But those problems are even there today. Talking about grief, talking about depression, talking about playing an equal role in society, it's the same thing. So how did it happen? It's a subject that is worthy of a much longer debate.
Sure. And that you mentioned that your 10-year-old daughter comes from school and she brings up a topic of discrimination. A, the age that she brings it up in, and second, where you see this influence happening, you must have dug deeper, whether it was the classmates who were discussing it or whether it was the teachers. If it was the teachers, what is it that, where do you see this coming from?
It's coming from, it's a narrative, no? Even in textbooks you'll find that it is all internalized. So they'll talk to you about Sati Pratha, they'll talk to you about the ills that have been there in the Indian society. They'll tell you about how British brought in a widow remarriage bill and all of that. But nobody is going to tell you that in Vedic times there was a woman called Maitri who argued with her husband. It is not there in the textbooks. But you have Sati remarriage and Rammohn Roy and William Bentinck bringing in the rule, anti-Sati rule, in the textbooks. So
of a 10-year-old? Of a 10-year-old? Or is it a discussion happening by the teachers or something?
Yeah, it's a discussion is happening. And these things, by the time they're in 6th grade, 7th grade, all these things are there.
Okay. All right. We are accepting questions. The last round of questions that can be sent, if you'd like to send, we've received few questions. Shefali, question to you. You've spoken about Sanatan culture, so which the values come from Sanatan Dharma. Therefore, Buddhism and Jainism, both of these, which, are, some say they are, it's basically Hindu Dharma only, or they've come out of Hindu Dharma. They don't talk about moksha for women. A woman can't get moksha. What do you have to say about that?
I'm not a theological scholar, so I will not be able to answer that question. I'm sorry.
Was supposed to be a lady. She became a Tirthankar?
Yeah, and moksha is not denied to any gender.
See, logically, if there is a soul and if the soul is without a gender, then the soul is capable of attaining moksha, doesn't matter whether it's a male soul or a female soul. So Sandeep would know this. There was a lady, Kannada poetess called Akka Mahadevi, who was she had reached that stage of oneness with Shiva that she felt that her clothes were a burden on her. So she discarded her clothes and she would roam around naked. And when people asked her, and this is at a time where it was considered, a grave sin, that why would you do that? So she said that I have realized that I am a soul. So there is no gender. So I don't need to hide my body with clothes because I realize that I am a soul and I realize the person next to me is also a soul.
Okay.
And she was a Jain, by the way. I think.
There's a question. Now we're taking the questions. Who's Rishwan Joshi? Can you please stand up? Rishwan Joshi? Rishwan Joshi, are you here? If you're not, okay. Rishwan, you've written something in Spanish. Yeah, so we'd like to know what have you written, because there is German. Is he Spanish? Is the boy in Spanish?
Italian. I mean, it's not German.
Can you give your question in English? The little boy. Yeah, you can just write it in English and we'll take it from you. Can you please collect that question from... Yeah. Shefali, the next question is for you. It's from Maulik. Again, Maulik Joshi. How did the feminist movement continue to grow despite the 1980s backlash? Shefali? Question for you.
What was the question? What was the question? Say it again, please.
How did the feminist movement continue to grow despite the 1980s backlash?
I am not a scholar in feminism. I have stayed away from feminism, like standard feminism studies consciously. I actually, when I was doing my mass communication, I was at that point of time, I think at 21, everybody thinks they're a feminist. So I went to the university to pursue a course in women's studies. And they started off with Simone de Beauvoir's book, which said that a woman is not born, a woman is made. And by the time the third lecture came, I was so bored out of my mind that I quit it. And after that, I never went there. So I cannot answer your question.
Okay. Arvindan is here. Yeah. Arvindan, could you please judge the best question? Yeah, that will help us. So this question is from Dr. Shastri. Dr. Shastri, are you here? All right, he's here. Again, you give questions, but you don't get prizes because you're a speaker. All right. So his question is, modern women have time for Shefali. Modern women have time to do male jobs because of contraception and lesser maternal and child mortality. Feminism is a natural consequence of competing with men for the same task. What do you have to say about that?
No, that is true. Contraception, having lesser children, having household appliances, everything contributed na, the technological age, because you had a lot of free time, and then you felt that it was easier to handle the domestic responsibilities. So obviously social norms changed, economy changed, it was no longer possible for men and women to work from home, both needed to go out of the house and take up a job. So obviously they were competing with each other in the same field. So yes, I agree.
Okay. Dr. B.K. Sharma. All right. So Dr. B.K. Sharma's question is to Shefali. Is treating women, very interesting, is treating women as Shakti not a curse for them?
Why should it be a curse? You're actually, I'm not saying that by calling them Shakti, you enshrine them into one mandir and say, okay, you sit here and you do puja. Calling them Shakti is, you're saying that you have latent power. Why should it be a disadvantage? Shakti can have many manifestations, Shakti implies that you're active, you're dynamic, you're doing something. Shakti is not sitting in one mandir waiting
Any
to
more
be
questions?
worshipped.
Tekwani ji, if there are any more questions, please send them.
Shakti means what? Shakti means a force. Shakti means power, no? Why should it be discriminatory? Why should it be a disadvantage? I'm not understanding your question. Are you making an observation or are you asking me a question?
What is your question?
What is your question? Yeah, so is Shiva. So? It is merely saying that you are a force to reckon with, that you are the divine feminine. How is it treating you special? And if it is special, I mean, Purusha is also special, Prakriti is also special. They are equal, but they are not the same. So, yeah, both of them are special. So, sorry, I'm still not understanding your question.
Dr. Sharma, both are special. Yeah, because in Karwa Chauth you are special, yeah, and say when a woman delivers a baby, 9 months she's special and thereafter also she's special. Okay, fine.
That's, yeah, but that's not a question, that's an observation.
comment, yeah,
that,
which has been responded
I have
to.
2 sons and 1 daughter, okay, so I deal with this Purusha and Prakriti thing every day at home. While I want my daughter to be raised as a perfectly free, mentally free individual who is free to achieve her own potential, that doesn't mean that I want my sons to always feel on the defensive, no. They're both special.
Okay, who's Naveen? Okay, so Naveen has given the moderator a question. The moderator has moderate views. The moderator is not supposed to be giving their views. So I'm going to put the question to both my panelists. The same question both the panelists will respond to. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Maria ji, first I'll let you go. Yeah. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus, and hence feminism. What's your view?
I don't know what is Mars and what is Venus.
Yeah,
honestly.
Let Maria ji respond. Then I'll put the same question.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody's aware of it.
I mean, it just shows a difference. Like, usually you say women are more maybe compassionate. I don't think you find any woman butcher or this type of jobs. Or in this way, there is a difference, and also strength-wise. But I don't also understand this Mars and Venus. I feel they are complementary. Yeah.
Okay. Shefali, men are from Mars, women are from Venus, hence feminism.
There's a book like this.
If your question is, do men and women think differently, I think it depends on the circumstances, it depends on the stimulus, it depends on what is their reaction, it depends on the nature of the person, whether it's a male or female. There is no, I have also read the book, but doesn't mean that every woman in the world is okay to ask directions, and every man in the world is not scared of asking directions. You know, there are men who ask for directions, and there are women who are very logical, or whatever the things that the book says that men are, and the book that says that women. I don't remember much of it. I read it like 20 years ago. But I think one of the things that I remember is this asking for directions thing.
Okay, this is the last question, and this is from Amit Gujral. Okay, so the question is, please correct me if please tell me if I'm reading it right. Isn't the concept of a stay-at-home mother, this is for you, Shefali, a stay-at-home wife, mother, an Abrahamic impressed upon our society?
See, again, as I explained it probably, traditionally in our society where both men and women were always economic partners, partners in desire and partners in dharma, they mostly worked from home, so there was no concept of this one person going out and working and one person staying at home. They both sort of interchangeably did the jobs. And even when one person did, like for example, in farming, if the man did the actual tilling, women did a lot of other work, subsidiary work that came with it. So this stay-at-home concept, yeah, it's not so much Abrahamic as I think the society changed, the workforce changed, the economic conditions changed, where it was essential for people to go out and travel for some distance to go to their workplaces. And then your families became shorter, and when you had children, then one person had to stay at home. But nowadays, of course, again, it's very fluid and it's changing. I know so many people who have taken the decision, so many men who have taken the decision after they got, after their wives got pregnant, to stay at home for a year or two, and the women worked. So I think it's a matter of, simply who is earning better, or how, at least nowadays it is. Maybe not in all societies. Again, it's too big a problem for me to generalize. But I think stay-at-home concept is actually, Grihini and Grihastha was something that we had, who were in charge of the home, both of them. The Grihastha had certain duties, the Grihini had certain duties. But this I am a housewife thing always comes with a little bit of defensiveness, So when you ask people, what do you do? Oh, I am just a housewife. You're never just a housewife. That is the most complicated, most multitasking role anyone can ever do.
Okay, so both are panelists from different countries. Shefali, obviously from here, and Mariaji from Germany. Both are championing the cause of the Shakti. And interestingly, Mariaji, with her experiences in Germany and then 4 decades here, large part of your life you've lived here in India, you believe in the concept of Shakti, and you actually, while you were in Germany, you contested the entire feminism wave that you saw coming.
And I feel what is really lacking in the West is this knowledge about Atman. Because this is a real equality. And
that's a good point.
And then men and women ultimately, as Shefali said, ultimately we are all women here because we are all manifestation of Shakti, men and women. But the concept of Atman, if this is missing, and also if the concept of rebirth is missing, then we get very, very desperate to achieve something in this life, to make all our dreams true, because when I'm 50, 60, what will happen? And then I have never a chance again. And then, you are so lucky in India, and I really hope you keep your...
Which you're bringing back the concept of, the Abrahamic religion, the Christianity, what you initially grew up in. So you're actually saying how that versus Sanatana Dharma, and what Sanatana Dharma brings to it, and therefore how feminism wouldn't fit because of the...
Yeah, and also, you should know, in between 1550 and 1650, some 40 to 60,000 women were killed, burned, because of witchcraft. No? And until, I think, 1869, women could not study. So, until 1971...
In the West, you're talking about the West.
And 76, in Switzerland and Portugal, women could not vote. In India, you had already a prime minister as a woman. So actually, you are far ahead, and don't take this propaganda. They try to push, and they try to get the young people especially. They try to mold the young people as they did with us in the 60s, 70s, to make them so modern, progressive, turn them against their parents if possible, and destroy the society. And
so that's your advice to the young girls of India and globally if they're watching you. That's your advice to the young girls of India.
Yeah. And also, to the whole society, no?
Shefali, the last question, after which I'll close this discussion, is like, you're a mother to a daughter and 2 sons. So what would your advice be to young girls? What is it that they should do? And to mothers, what is it they should do? Because you're so, anti-feminism, so that the daughter doesn't become a feminist.
I'm anti the Western concept of feminism,
Western concept. We are discussing Western concept of feminism.
Yeah.
When I say just feminism, is Western concept of feminism.
Yeah. So, see, I don't like giving advice. I'm nobody to give advice. I'm not one big saint or anybody to give advice to anyone. So I can only say that what I do. And for my children, I can only give them pointers. How they'll turn out is ultimately according to them. I did a lot of things which my parents probably didn't approve of, but that's the nature of the beast. That's what everybody has their own personality which comes out. So I'm not going to give anybody any advice.
The feminists won't come running after you, you can.
Pardon me?
No feminist is coming running after you.
No, not really. I mean, I'm not giving anybody any advice. It's not my place to sit in some...
not sit in some... Because you are a mother. You have your experience of that.
I've written a book on parenting, but where I have shared my experiences, maybe they lead to a lesson, I don't know. But that lesson is for everybody who is reading it to appreciate and to follow if they will.
Do you talk about feminism in that book?
Pardon me?
Do you talk about feminism in that book?
No, it's just about parenting. It's just about my experiences as a mother of triplets. The book is in Marathi. It's called Ghare Hindate Akashi. But because I have 2 boys and a girl, I see them grow up. I see them getting influenced by all these ideas. See, I want the same thing for my daughter as I want for my sons. I want them to develop their potential to the fullest degree, both of them. Doesn't matter if they're boys or girls or whatever.
Holistically, when you say holistically, you mean the woman as a woman holistically and the man as a man holistically, or do you mean something different?
No, both as individual human beings holistically.
Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.